My name is Amy Willard, and today I'll be doing a persuasive speech on pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, or PGD. These are my roommates that are going to be watching. All right. Two individuals can carry up to 99.9% of the same DNA. This means that they only differ by 0.1%. Genetic testing is an up-and-coming topic in medicine that will soon be the forefront of healthcare. According to statistics, more than 20% of infant deaths are caused by birth defects or genetic mutations. Future generations in your family will most likely be impacted by this. I'm qualified to speak on this topic because I'm a senior nursing student and I'm currently participating in a class that's doing a study on genomics and genetics, in which we have actually studied PGD. The purpose of this speech is to give the audience knowledge on the skewed morality of PGD and to persuade them that education on the process of testing, misdiagnosis, and risk to the fetus is the solution to helping the public in a direction towards God's value of innocent life. PGD was introduced in the 1970s as an idea, and now we're actually able to do testing. It is a technique that's used to identify abnormalities in embryos. These embryos are often created during IVF. In vitro fertilization is a process that couples who are having problems conceiving can use, and you take a sperm and an egg from a couple and scientifically put it together in a petri dish and then implant it in the uterus. Right here, these are some of the genetic mutations that can actually be tested for using PGD. Things like Down syndrome, Gaucher's disease, myotonic dystrophy, which is a muscular problem in children. God values innocent human life, and PGD goes against this for two reasons. First, God is the sole creator of human life. IVF, the process that's used before PGD is done, creates children scientifically. Second, embryos that are seen as defective after testing are discarded, and as Christians, we believe that life begins at conception. I believe that if people were better educated on this topic, more innocent lives would be spared. I will now support my thesis statement by presenting three main points about adequate education, including testing process, misdiagnosis, and potential harm to fetuses. First, education on PGD testing process will lead to a more informed decision about participating in this testing. The American Pregnancy Association shows that PGD is an invasive process that begins with removing cells from an embryo. As seen right here, they actually go into the egg and pull cells out. Once these cells are removed, they're then tested for genetic abnormality. If they prove to be positive for any genetic mutation, they're then discarded or terminated. And if not, they're either implanted into the uterus or they're frozen for future use. They may not be used at all. This brings about the moral issue of when life begins, as well as the issue of termination. Leviticus 24:17-18 states that whoever takes an innocent life shall surely be put to death. Next, educating clients about the notion of misdiagnosis during this testing can lead to less participation in the testing and lowering the rate of termination due to false positives. Stephen Bellamy states that misdiagnosis can occur during this testing. Its newness means that certain abnormal genetic mutations can be tested, such as the ones I mentioned before, but there is still a chance of false positives for these. Embryos can be destroyed because of false positives. Also, a risk for information not being detected during the testing may result in a couple having a child that they eventually come to resent because of its genetic abnormality. Finally, education on the risk to embryos from this type of testing can lead to increased protection of innocent life. Stephen Bellamy also states that damage can occur during biopsy. Another risk is spontaneous abortion. Serena Chin, who is an endocrinologist, explains the all or nothing effect during this testing, and this simply means that once the embryos have been invaded with the testing materials, they either will stop growing or spontaneously abort, or they will continue to grow, and the chances are pretty fair that they will be a normal child. Testing for abnormalities related to potential damage can be summed up by a statement from Dr. Michael Tucker, who's an embryologist. He says that embryo biopsy to screen for chromosomal errors as a means to do anything other than reduce the low risk of conceiving an abnormal child or minimize the risk of miscarriage is uneasily justified. In conclusion, PGD is controversial. Moral law is made by God. This testing can cause someone to live with lifelong consequences that can cause them to live without the joy that God had intended us to. Education can speak to the internal moral compasses of people and change their view on this type of testing. Because this issue is not well known, you should educate your friends and family on this matter, especially if it's a personal matter that they're experiencing. If you don't have enough information on this topic, you can also refer them to a genetic counselor for information. Psalms 139, 13 through 14 says, "You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." We are created with a purpose, even those of us with genetic abnormalities. Life should not be discarded because it's imperfect. If that was the case, then none of us would be sitting here today.